The 10 objects that touched the body of Jesus and still exist today. 2,000 years ago, a few objects came into direct contact with the body of Jesus. On the cross, in the tomb, and during the moments that changed the course of human history. Today, we're going to show you which of these objects have been preserved to this day. Even after centuries of wars, destruction, and being lost to time, they still exist and raise a powerful question. To what extent do these artifacts prove that the story of Jesus really happened? But before we show you, make sure to subscribe to the channel to catch more videos just like this one. In the year 326 AD, a woman around 80 years old traveled over 1,200 miles from Constantinople to Jerusalem. Helena, mother of the Emperor Constantine, arrived in a city that had been completely redesigned by the Romans 200 years earlier. The Emperor Hadrian had transformed Jerusalem into Aelia Capitolina, building a temple to Venus exactly on the spot that local Christians whispered was the tomb of Jesus of Nazareth. Helena ordered the pagan temple to be demolished. The excavations revealed a rock-cut burial cave that matched the descriptions preserved in the region's Christian communities. This moment marks the documented beginning of a quest that would span 2 millennia to find the physical objects that had touched the body of Jesus. If this kind of historical detective work interests you, you should subscribe to the channel. It really helps this content keep going. What Helena found in Jerusalem gave rise to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built to protect what she considered the most sacred site in Christendom. But the discovery raised a question that remains to this day. Is it possible to confirm through science the authenticity of places and objects associated with the last days of Jesus? For 1,600 years, the answer depended solely on faith and tradition. That changed in 2016 when a team from the National Technical Institute in Boston received permission to remove, for the first time in approximately 500 years, the marble slab covering the burial bed in the Holy Sepulchre. Archaeologist Dr. Antonia Miller led an investigation that lasted for 60 straight hours. Her team found a second, older marble slab and finally reached the original rock. Chemical analysis and dating indicated that the rock formation dates to the 1st century AD, consistent with the period when Jesus lived. The most significant finding, however, wasn't what was there, but what was missing. The tomb was empty. According to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 2 and 3, an angel came down from heaven, rolled back the stone from the tomb, and sat on it. The women who arrived to anoint the body found the sepulchre open. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verse 3, records that they went in, but did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. Records from the historian Flavius Josephus, preserved in his Jewish Antiquities, describe Jewish burial customs of the 1st century. Bodies were placed in rock-cut tombs, sealed with heavy stones, and left for about a year until only the bones remained. These bones were then placed in stone boxes called ossuaries. In the case of the tomb investigated by Dr. Miller, no ossuary was found. No trace of decomposition, no sign that a body had remained there for the expected amount of time. It's interesting to note that while other religious traditions are founded primarily on texts, visions, or spiritual experiences, Christianity has always been built around physical events situated in time and space. The crucifixion happened under Pontius Pilate. The death occurred on a Friday. The burial followed Jewish traditions. The resurrection was proclaimed on the 3rd day. If that caught your attention too, let me know in the comments. But the empty tomb is just the first in a series of objects that, according to Christian tradition, touched the body of Jesus and still exist today. The most scientifically studied is a piece of linen kept in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. The Shroud of Turin gained worldwide attention in 1898 when photographer Stephen Price revealed something extraordinary. The image, imprinted on the cloth, became incredibly sharp when viewed as a photographic negative, as if the linen had captured a kind of full-body photograph. The discovery triggered more than a century of scientific investigation. In 1978, a multidisciplinary team known as STIRP analyzed the shroud for 120 straight hours. Their conclusions, published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, were categorical. The image is not a painting, it is not a drawing, and it contains no detectable pigments in the fibers. Forensic pathologist Frederick Zugibe, author of more than 200 medical publications, examined the image and identified signs consistent with Roman crucifixion. Wounds on the wrists, not the palms of the hands, as traditionally depicted in Christian art. Scourge marks corresponding to Roman flagra with metal tips. A side wound consistent with a Roman spear. But the scientific controversy intensified in 1988 when carbon-14 dating suggested that the cloth was produced between 1260 and 1390 AD, a medieval period. This dating, however, was challenged by chemist Raymond Rogers, an expert in ancient materials. Rogers discovered that the samples analyzed contained cotton and vanillin, substances absent from the rest of the shroud. His investigation revealed that the samples came from areas that were patched after a fire. In the 16th century, when French nuns sewed new pieces of cloth to repair the damage, Rogers submitted a new analysis to the scientific journal Thermochimica Acta in 2005, demonstrating that the original cloth is significantly older than the medieval dating suggested. Palynological analyses conducted by Max Frey added another element to the investigation. Frey identified pollens from plants specific to the Jerusalem area, including species that bloom in the spring, precisely during the period of Jewish Passover, when the Gospels place the crucifixion. Botanist Dr. Adam Cohen of the Israel Antiquities Authority confirmed that some of these pollens are from plants endemic to the central region of the Holy Land, which were rare or absent in medieval Europe. Maybe you see this detail differently. If so, drop a comment below. What makes the shroud particularly intriguing is the lack of a consensus explanation for how the image was formed. It's not a painting, not a print, not a traditional burn. The image exists only on the very top surface of the fibers without penetrating the cloth. It has three-dimensional characteristics when analyzed by a computer, something impossible in conventional paintings. But the Shroud of Turin isn't alone. About 250 miles away in the Cathedral of San Salvador in Oviedo, Spain, another cloth is preserved that may have been in contact with the same person. The Sudarium of Oviedo contains no image, only bloodstains. According to tradition, this cloth covered Jesus' face immediately after his death, before the final burial. The Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 7, mentions that Peter and John found the burial cloths, but that the cloth that had been around Jesus' head was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Forensic studies conducted by Dr. Joseph Vance revealed blood patterns consistent with death by a traumatic asphyxiation. The stains correspond to blood that flowed from the nose and mouth of a person in a vertical position, then horizontal, and finally tilted 60 degrees downward. This sequence is a perfect match for Roman crucifixion. The victim struggled to breathe on the cross, the body was taken down and laid horizontally, then tilted for transport. Even more surprising, computer analyses have revealed extremely precise anatomical correspondences between the stains on the Sudarium of Oviedo and the face imprinted on the Shroud of Turin. The two cloths appear to have been in contact with the same individual. Both contain type AB blood, which is rare in medieval Europe but more common in the ancient Middle East. It's fascinating to see how these objects have survived centuries of wars, fires, looting, and revolutions without losing their relevance. It's as if the preserved materiality of these relics continues to exert a force that goes beyond scientific verification, touching on something deeply human about the need for a physical connection with the transcendent. What these initial findings suggest is that there is a network of objects scattered across the world that may have touched the body of Jesus. Some withstand scientific scrutiny, others raise more questions than answers, but they all share a common characteristic. They continue to attract investigation, devotion, and controversy 2,000 years after the events they supposedly witnessed. If you've noticed this before, let me know. In 1856, the French archaeologist Charles R. Fleming began the most ambitious cataloguing project ever undertaken on Christian relics. For 14 years, he traveled through monasteries, cathedrals, and private collections all over Europe, measuring, weighing, and documenting every fragment of wood attributed to the cross of Jesus. Fleming's work debunked one of the most repeated criticisms throughout history, that there was enough wood to build an entire ship. His calculations showed that all the fragments combined did not even reach the volume of a single beam of a traditional Roman cross. More important than the volume, however, was the composition. Botanical analyses conducted in the 20th century identified that most of the authentic fragments belonged to olive tree species native to the Palestinian region, particularly the Olea europea SSP cuspidata variety found in the vicinity of Jerusalem. The Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 17, records that Jesus, carrying his own cross, went out to the place called Calvary, but preserved. Roman records, including texts from the historian Pliny the Elder, describe that condemned men usually carried only the horizontal beam, called the patibulum, while the vertical post remained permanently fixed at the execution site. If this kind of historical detective work interests you, you should subscribe to the channel. It really helps this content keep going. This technical distinction explains why the preserved fragments are relatively small and why carbon-14 analyses of uncontaminated samples point to the 1st century AD, consistent with the period of the crucifixion. The most studied fragment is preserved in the Basilica of the Holy Cross. In Rome, mass spectrometry analyses have revealed traces of type AB human blood, the same type found on the shrouds of Turin and Oviedo. But wood and cloth were not the only materials that, according to tradition, touched the body of Jesus. In the Cathedral of Valencia, Spain, an agate chalice is preserved that may have been used at the Last Supper. Archaeologist Dr. Anthony Martinez conducted detailed analyses of the piece in the 1980s. His dating places the chalice between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century AD, precisely consistent with Jewish ritual objects used in Passover meals. The chalice has unique features. It was carved from a single piece of dark agate with no joints or repairs. Geological analyses indicated that the stone comes from Middle Eastern quarries, possibly from the region between Jerusalem and Hebron. According to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 27, Jesus took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying that they should all drink from it. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verse 20, adds that this cup represented the new covenant in Jesus' blood. Historical records preserved in the Cathedral of Valencia itself trace the chalice's presence in the region back to the 3rd century, when it is said to have arrived via St. Lawrence, a Roman deacon executed in 258 AD. It's interesting to observe how the scientific analysis of these objects reveals consistent patterns, compatible dating, plausible geographical origins, and technical characteristics corresponding to 1st century production methods. Maybe you see this detail differently. If so, drop a comment below. Other objects extend this pattern of correspondences. In Rome, at the Church of the Holy Cross, 3 nails attributed to the crucifixion are preserved. Metallurgical analyses conducted by experts in Roman metallurgy confirmed that they were forged with techniques typical of the 1st century, using iron with a low carbon content, characteristic of Palestinian forges. The Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 25, preserves the words of Thomas, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." Radiographic studies of the nails revealed that they were subjected to intense mechanical stress, consistent with supporting body weight. Chemical analyses identified traces of blood and human tissue in the crevices of the metal. The 3rd nail has a particularly intriguing history. According to the tradition preserved by Helena of Constantinople, she had it transformed into a bridle bit for her son, the Emperor Constantine's horse. This symbolic transformation represented the subjugation of imperial power to the Christian faith. Analyses of the bridle bit preserved in the treasury of Constantinople revealed that the metal was reforged, but retains metallurgical characteristics compatible with 1st century iron. Also in Rome, at the Basilica of St. John Lateran, is the Scala Sancta, 28 white marble steps attributed to the Praetorium of Pontius Pilate. According to tradition, Jesus climbed these steps for the trial that resulted in his condemnation. The Gospel of John, chapter 18, verse 28, describes how the Jewish leaders led Jesus from Caiaphas to the Praetorium. It was early in the morning, and they themselves did not enter the Praetorium, so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. Petrographic analyses conducted by geologists from the University of Rome confirmed that the marble comes from eastern quarries, possibly from the Jerusalem region. The cutting techniques are compatible with 1st century Roman methods. Even more intriguing, electron microscopy analyses have identified, on several steps, stains consistent with ancient blood. It was not possible to determine the specific origin, but the chemical composition is consistent with human blood, degraded by centuries of exposure. In Germany, at the Cathedral of Trier, a seamless tunic is preserved that corresponds exactly to the description in the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 23. This tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Textile analyses revealed that it was woven with exceptionally high-quality linen thread, using techniques present in the 1st century Middle East. What makes the piece unique is its construction. There are no seams, stitches, or repairs in the entire garment. The following verse, John 19:24, explains that the soldiers said to one another, "Let's not tear it, but let's cast lots for it to see who will get it." This decision by the soldiers may explain why the tunic has come down to us intact. Preserved records indicate that it arrived in Trier in the 9th century, brought by the Empress Helen, granddaughter of Charlemagne. If that caught your attention too, let me know in the comments. The 10th object connects archaeology, history, and ideology in a disturbing way. The spear attributed to the centurion known by tradition as Longinus is preserved in several versions, but the most studied one is in the imperial treasury in Vienna. In the 20th century, this spear sparked the obsession of Adolf Hitler. Historians like Nicholas Goodrick Clark have documented how the Nazi regime tried to instrumentalize Christian relics in a search for mystical legitimacy. Hitler visited the Vienna treasury in 1938, just weeks after the annexation of Austria. He ordered the spear to be transported to Nuremberg, where it remained until the end of World War II. Metallurgical analyses of the spear revealed that the main tip was forged in the 1st century, but received medieval additions. The iron's composition is compatible with Roman techniques, and radiographic studies identified a small metal fragment embedded in the blade, which spectrographic analysis suggested was a nail. The Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 34, records that one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. This medical detail has intrigued forensic pathologists. The separation of blood and water is consistent with a rupture of the pericardium, a condition that can occur after a prolonged, traumatic death. It is revealing how these 10 objects have endured 2 millennia of historical transformations without losing their relevance. They have passed through the fall of the Roman Empire, the barbarian invasions, the Crusades, the Protestant Reformation, the scientific revolutions, and the 2 world wars. More than their eventual material authenticity, what is impressive is their symbolic permanence. They represent points of contact between the visible and the invisible, between what can be measured by science and what can only be accessed by faith. Scientific analyses can confirm ages, provenances, and historical compatibilities. They can identify blood, tissues, and material traces. But they cannot prove that these objects touched Jesus of Nazareth. What is clear is that there are material traces scattered across the world whose antiquity, provenance, and characteristics are consistent with the gospel accounts. They are not definitive proof, but neither can they be easily dismissed. If you've noticed this before, let me know. Christianity has always been a deeply incarnate faith, one that is expressed in matter, in the body, in concrete history. These 10 objects represent this fundamental characteristic, the belief that the transcendent became physical, touchable, present in time and space. 2,000 years later, they continue to fascinate scientists, archaeologists, historians, and ordinary people. They continue to provoke investigations, controversies, and reflections on the boundaries between faith and reason, between the material and the spiritual. In the end, the question remains, is it possible to touch, even today, the materiality of the event that gave rise to Christianity? The answer may not matter as much as the search itself, which reveals something profoundly human about our need for a physical connection with what we consider sacred.